Hello my wonderful elves, hobbits and goblins. It's been a while, but I'm back in Middle-earth, furiously painting away, and I'm bringing you my latest tutorial. We're going down to Goblin Town for this one, and I'm going to show you how I jazzed up these bases for my Goblin Town horde, and show you a couple hobby tips along the way. I had a spare Balrog base from a commission I did a while back. Make sure you watch that tutorial because it is fire. And I glued the scribe's platform to the rocky bit at the back using super glue. Now, unless Jimmy here is the Silver Surfer or has nicked a hoverboard from Back to the Future, that platform needs some support at the front. And for that, I'll be using these sticks. But they aren't just ordinary M&S sticks, my friends. These sticks are from reed diffusers, which my wife has generously scattered around the house like we're auditioning for an interior design show. However, once those suckers have done their job and are completely dry, I have a plethora of hobby material, and I mean loads. The nice thing about these is that they are lightweight, easy to cut, and already have a subtle texture to them, so once painted they look convincingly like wood grain. Perfect! Now, the base itself is pretty rocky, and to make it fit the rest of my army, I need to texture it up a bit. And for this, I added generous gloops of 𝐒𝐿 Dark Earth diorama texture paste, and smothered it around the base while leaving some of those rocks exposed. In the first few minutes whilst this was drying, I added some planks of wood using these bits of MDF. Now these are actually from frames of MDF terrain kits, which you would normally discard and throw away in the bin, but I like to be a little bit of a hobby hoard with materials just like this for a rainy day. So I just broke these up accordingly and nestled them into the texture paste and set it aside to dry for about an hour. Onto the painting. I started with a deep grey from Army Painter to base coat the rocks that the platform is sitting on, and any that are still jutting out from the texture. Oh, and before I forget, Oak Brown was painted onto the reed diffuser sticks, but I left the MDF planks unpainted. Once the grey on the rocks was dry, I added a wash of dark tone all over them, not worrying if I got any onto the texture itself, as I'll be painting that next anyway. As this is my first video of the year, I'm wondering what hobby goals you guys have set yourself this year. Are you starting a new army, or at least trying to finish one? Going to your first tournament, or maybe painting that model which has been in your bucket list since the first age? Let me know in the comments, as it's always good seeing people's New Year's hobby resolutions. And I don't know about you, but if I write them down and tell people about it, I feel more inclined to actually get something done. For me, it will finally be finishing Smaug for my 1000th painted Middle-earth miniature. I finished off painting the rocks with a lighter dry brush of an old Army Painter grey called 𝘉𝘁𝐾𝐒. This is a really nice warm grey colour, and even since AP released their newest paint range a few years back, plus a few add-ons since then to give us around about 300 paints, I still use quite a few of the old ones like this, as it's just missing from their range. Now onto the texture bit. I slapped on a fair amount of strong tone all over it, but I tried to avoid the wooden bits where possible. The strong tone will naturally sink into the texture nicely to give it some depth before dry brushing on some dark stone. Another colour which I find amazing, but Army Painter smited me down and said, "Not in our new range, I thank you very much." And I used it to create a rocky look for the texture. I even used a little bit of this to create some darker areas on the larger rocks, to give them some additional shading here and there. For the final highlight on the texture, I used Field Grey. It's a light grey with a subtle green tint to it. It's a great alternative to the pure greys, and something I think is sorely missing from the current range. Across the Goblin Town army, I've added broken wood to most of the bases to give them that underground, ramshackled look to them, just like the film. So let's paint these next. I used a noble skin speed paint to alter the tone of the MDF, and add some uneven streaking, giving it a much more non-uniform weathered look. It dries nice and quick too, which means that I could go straight in with a couple dry brush highlights. No need for sitting around and watching paint dry all day. I added highlights of leather brown followed by paratrooper tan, and I didn't mind overshooting and going onto the textured areas. If anything, it just adds to the grotty, grimy feel to the base. For base rims, my evil armies are mainly painted with dark stone. It's a great browny grey colour, and I think it frames the miniatures really nicely. For the Goblin Town army though, I went one step further, and I added patches of a light earth weathering powder. There's quite a few brands out there that make these, and there's loads of colours to choose from, and they're brilliant for adding a bit of extra variation to miniatures, and basing, and terrain. Well, pretty much anything really. If you do use weathering powders, make sure that you spray varnish or airbrush your miniatures afterwards to seal everything in place and to prevent it from rubbing off. And if you want even more basing ideas for your underground dwellers, along with a few extra hobby tips, you could check out my basing tutorial right here.